The National Academy of Agricultural Research Management organized 4th edition of AgriUdan, a food and agribusiness accelerator in Hyderabad. The 4-day capacity building workshop was held from 20th to 23rd December. On the third day of the workshop, Gaurav Patel, founder of Pipebagger, took a session on market research, sales and marketing strategy for the 10 selected agri-startups. Listen in.
Welcome startups. So energized, so enthusiastic to be here with everyone. I mean, been working closely with AgriUdan, A-Idea for a couple of years already, and it's always a different energy. Certainly, agriculture, food comes as a passion to me, though my profession is into sales. But then it's more like a different thing for me. It comes within the heart, and always I come here. I'm here in this premise, and I see a different energy. I mean, the eyes are sparkling with with a different direction, and everybody. So it's something like it's when I'm here, it's not work or it's not sales or it's not marketing or something like that. It's more about things that we connect at a different level. So today, this session, where though I'm going to talk about target market fit, sales process, and lot many other aspects of sales, but then the approach today will be a little different. We'll be talking about the tactics and the mindset both. Because as entrepreneurs, as startup founders, when we are looking forward to shift the gears, to take our vehicles to the next level, to get onto the growth path, both skills and mindset are both highly required. Okay, so this is what we'll be looking at today. And in case if anyone has any questions, please do make a note of it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to address all the questions. I'm not sure if you'll get questions right now. There are high possibilities that you might get certain questions maybe after this session as well. You'll have my contact details right at the end of this presentation. In the end, you can email me, you can call me or connect with me on LinkedIn. Absolutely not a problem. I'll get back to you at earliest possible. So quick thing about me, actually the introduction is done already, but then let me quickly do that. I've been graduated from UK, from Newcastle University. I did BTech and then engineering, masters in communications and signal processing. 2008 was a great recession time, and I was accidentally into sales because I had no job opportunities, and I just bumped into sales. That's how I began. But then eventually it was good. I mean, I started enjoying it because tech is something that I did in my studies, but then I started selling technology. Okay. Meeting a lot of people, going about places, understanding the business challenges and how technology is actually solving those business challenges is what I really enjoyed. Okay. And different customers had different problems, different challenges, and so lot many things. So initially when I entered into sales, I thought that it is going to be a lot of pressurous thing. It is going to be something which is, maybe I may not be able to do it or what, but then it didn't happen. It was not like that. So that is where, I mean, after 3 to 4 years from there, when I thought about this, I realized an importance of mindset. And I would be very thankful to my boss at that time who actually helped me do that. Okay, and I didn't knew that I'm actually going through that, but he helped me have that right mindset in sales. So which is why, as I said in earlier, that mindset is something that we'll go through. And the best part is we won't know that it's happening. So currently I'm heading an agency of digital sales where I have a small team with myself. We work with small startup companies where we help them generate sales traction and set up their process, build their team, basically solve every challenges around sales and marketing that typically every startup faces. Okay, so beyond that, I also have my own startup with organic food e-commerce. So again, as I said, it's food being my passion. So that's again something that I'm doing. Across my sales journey, I have closed deals with startups. I've closed deals with Fortune 1000 and Fortune 500 companies with the likes of Coca-Cola, Otis Elevators, and the likes. Now here I come. When I talk to startup founders, okay, startup is something that comes with a purpose. It is something where people are trying to solve problems. It is something where people are trying to give back to society. They want to do something to the world. Okay, so it is a journey where people actually begin thinking about product, or product is actually solving the problem. Okay. And sales is something that a lot of times we end up doing it because we करना पड़ेगा, करना तो है, right? टीम नहीं है, हमें करना है, या we just keep doing it. Sometimes we bump across, sometimes we fall, sometimes we stumble upon new things, lot of things. But then one thing that we must understand is sales has to be unstoppable, regardless what, because this is the biggest reason why a startup can fail. I mean, all of us would have come across a stat saying that 90+% of startups are failing. Anyone who doesn't know that? We all know that, right? And one of the biggest reasons behind that is revenues. And what is stopping you from generating revenues? That is sales. So one most important thing for startups is sales has to be unstoppable. For mid-level companies, for large enterprises, they all have everything in place. They have people, they have processes, they have systems, everything in place, right? A lot of companies, they have their forecast for up to 5 to 10 years also. But for startups, you don't have forecast for following month as well, right? So which is why setting up a system, having the right team is quite important. But then more important is to have this mindset of unstoppable sales, right? Now, what do I mean with unstoppable sales? First thing is, once we are in that journey, your sales system is not in competition to any other sales system. Now, let me correct it again. I mean, let's not get confused. Your product is competing with another product in the market, but that is different from your sales system is competing to another sales system. For example, if I give you an example of Asian Paints, can anyone tell me Asian Paints sales system or the dealer management system is in competition with any other brand, any other company? No. They are in their own league, right? Because they have today, right, everything in place which is helping their sales rush like anything, and nobody can stop them. Okay. So setting up your sales system in such a way where you actually have no competition coming in right in front of you, or who can act as an obstacle between you and your customers. Second thing, your sales team wants to keep working with you. If your system is unstoppable, your team will stick with you and they want to work with you. Sales, is such a function where attrition is the highest. Not technology, not HR or any other function. It is sales where attrition is highest. And on average, if you hire a sales rep, their profitability in ideal terms will only come after 8 to 9 months. And 11 months is the attrition rate. So basically, you're hiring them for just 2 months of profitability? No. That's not startups would like to do, right? So which is why, again, thinking long-term perspective, thinking about ways on how our sales team can stick around. They want to work with us. They want to believe in our product. They want to believe in founder's vision. That's important, right? Third thing, your sales process will be painless. For example, lead generation. Lead generation is one of the biggest pain points for any sales head, any business head, any startup founder, or any CEO. Today, it is one of the biggest challenges, right? So having an unstoppable system in place, you also ensure that your entire process is painless. There is hard work. Creativity is also required, but then it's not painful. Fourth thing, one of the most important things, and that is predictability. Forecasting is different, predictability is different. With predictability, I mean, you are in a situation where you would know, okay, in Q3 with certain markets and for this certain number of products, how many leads can you expect? And if certain number of leads are coming through, according to conversion ratio, what kind of revenue can you expect in this quarter? So that kind of system, an unstoppable system, can help you figure out what's going to happen with the predictability. And the last thing, your process, people, and your plan. They are not going to, stop anywhere. They are not going to face any major hurdles because it is the system which is handling all of this. Okay. Anyone has any questions? I mean, this was the main foundation and the Yeah, please. You know, give a background on why it is important, right? So a lot of times we think that sales is important and sales is good and all, but then we don't think it in a way that we need to implement in such a way that it has to be unstoppable, right? And for this, there's one more thing. If we think that to implement such a system we need a full-fledged team, then it is not mandatory. I would personally say it is not mandatory, because we are talking about creating and setting up a system, right? You are at level 1, and to go from level 1 to level 2, okay, maybe certain things are required, but that's not necessary that looking at some other companies or your competitors, or someone else, you want to have a team of X number of people or have certain number of processes in place. It is a system. A system comprises of people plus processes and things that are required in sales. Okay, you can automate it as well. Your lead generation can also be automated, right? So people means people in the ecosystem, which also includes customers. Yeah, it also includes customers. First, now let me just very basically, tell you why target market fit for startups is important. 42% of startups said there is no product need. I mean, as in the beginning when I said 90+% of startups are failing. So when they were asked, they said that after talking to the customers, 42% of startup entrepreneurs said that 42% of startup entrepreneurs said that customers felt that there is no need of such a product. Why did that happen? One of the biggest reasons for that is they were actually approaching the wrong people. Haven't we seen products in the market which were launched way ahead of its time? Right? There are way many things. If we see, for an example, Airbnb was launched during peak recession time, right? But still they did it really well because of their positioning. Because when there was peak recession, people barely wanted to travel, but their positioning was so strong, they identified who are the ideal target profile and they just went after that. Second reason, a lot of times we think that companies were first in the market, first of its kind, companies who are fastest growing, companies with high profit margins, or companies with very innovative products are the ones who would grow faster. But data actually says that companies with a very, very clear understanding of their target market fit are the ones who are crushing the market, who are actually leading the market way beyond their potential. And the third reason, companies face less objections from the buyers. One of the very important thing to understand in sales, because once your target market fit is very clear, objections from the customers are going to be way less than what they are. Because we are actually talking to the right audience. We are talking to people who actually need our product. Now, let's talk about how to identify the target market fit. Like, there's one thing, a lot of sales leaders, a lot of marketing gurus, a lot of entrepreneurs, they talk about, a big process wherein you can uncover your target market fit, how to identify, how to figure it out. But out of my experience, I would have worked with more than 20 startups already across past 6 years. And target market fit has been a challenge to everybody. I wouldn't say almost everybody, to every entrepreneur that I've worked with. And having worked with them, we have also seen how they evolved in terms of identifying their ideal customer profiles. So things that I really understood out of my experience is what I'm jotting down here, specific to startups. So very first thing, you would have heard about TAM, total addressable market. So we are not going to use some heavy fancy jargons here. So I'm going to keep it really simple. So first, list down all the type of companies who could potentially use your product. I mean, all means all the type of companies who could potentially use your product, right? If I'm using this system here, then I would like to list down what kind of companies would like to use this system, right? Businesses, startup incubators, startups, hotels, right? There are so many type of companies. So company types, if you'd like to list them down. Now, filter how many of these companies or how many of these company types are undersupplied, underserved. Underserved, I mean those who are actually not currently utilizing the power or the potential of the product that you actually have. Underserved. Then, which type of companies would actually give you more profits? More profit in terms of with different type of companies working with you. There is something called perceived value and the actual value. So certain type of companies would tend to give you more revenue. Certain type of companies would tend to give you more profits. So I'm talking about company segments which can give you more profits. It also applies where, a certain amount, certain type of product, we all different startups, some have standardized products, some might also have customized products, right? So basically the profitability in terms of where you can have higher leverage. Third, filter out companies that are easier to access. So three things here. One, companies, those are underserved in current situation. Companies which can give you most profits, and companies with easiest access. Why easiest access? Because, as I said, for startups, lead generation is the biggest challenge. Okay, so with customers who are easier to access, your lead generation and your go-to-market strategy gets easier. Now, after finishing up with this process and after you apply these 4 filters, you will end up with certain company types or maybe a list of companies. And those are for you the ideal companies or customer segments to go after. Anyone has any questions? Okay. Now, prioritizing the target market. Now, among various company types or the list of companies that you have right in front of you, now whom to prioritize? Now, first priority will be to those, if you're lucky, then you will have companies that are underserved and can give you good profits and are easier to access as well. Right? So say for example, companies that are in your geography, in the same city, they are highly active on digital network, they can potentially give you higher profits, and they are underserved. So access is there, profits is there, and they are underserved. So their needs are big as well. That should be a number 1 priority. Number 2, I would go with companies that are facing serious problems and your product can solve. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, it's a terminology, but then eventually, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is customer. So your product is B2B or B2C? B2C. Yeah. So for you, that will be customer. So for customer, it will be like for B2C, here it is companies, right? So for B2C, it will be a customer demographic. So kind of demographic where the access, need and profitability, that way. So you can imagine it that way. Now the second priority will be customer types who are facing serious problems that your product can solve. Now I would rate serious problem more than the accessibility and profit is because in immediate and your long-term journey, that can actually help you crack big things. Because with big problems, the needs are bigger, budgets are bigger, and decisions are faster as well. For example, if there are customers who are easily accessible or who can give you profits, more profits, right? But then if the decision making is not very quick, we all as startups we need revenues coming in at regular intervals, right? So the customers who actually have very deep need will take decisions faster. Third priority will be with those who are easier to connect, because with that will come momentum. With momentum, your activities are ticking, right? You are sending out proposals regularly, you are meeting customers regularly, you are listening to them more often, and more listening means more churning, and your process is getting refined, right? So momentum is one of the biggest things that we need in our sales process, and the access is something customers who are easier in access will help us do that. A fourth priority will be with those where we see higher profits. Anyone has any questions? Okay. So once we get our target market fit clear, we tentatively have a list of our target audience. I mean, in terms of companies or company types or categories right in front of us. Now, how to go about identifying them and how to extract data. So primary research is something where usually, I mean, industry standard says primary research is something where we get an identification of, in terms of B2B, we get an identification in terms of company, prospect name, designations and all. But I would say, considering today's businesses, considering the competitive landscape, especially post-pandemic thing, I would say primary research also must include basic information related to our product segment about what is happening in a specific company, in an organization or their team. Okay, if I'm into this business of selling this, then I should understand what kind of systems they have in their conference rooms or in their meeting rooms. So to talk about sales process, the very first thing that comes in a sales process is your customer getting in touch with you. So that, according to me, is the first stage of a sales process. So that touch point could be in terms of conversation that we are doing over a phone, over an email, right? That could also be potentially where a customer is actually reading a blog article, they're actually seeing a social media post, or they hear about you from someone, a word of mouth, they see a newspaper ad, or any touch point wherein they come to learn about you, your product, or your company for the first time. So that is something that has introduced them about your ecosystem. So that is called the first connect. Then comes a meeting, a demo, or a deeper, basically meeting or demo is something where they actually want to spend more time and understand specifically about what your product is and how can they impact in their business. And once that happens, there is an opportunity where buyers say that yes, we are interested, we would like to know more, what will be the timelines expected, what kind of budgets will come, and basically any signal that they give towards their interest towards your product. Then is the closure as in they finally make a decision whether they want to purchase or they don't want to purchase. And last comes customer success. Customer success is one of the most important parts of a sales process, which is missing in most of the companies, or I would say most of the sales and marketing departments, because people consider customer success as customer support or client servicing. But customer success is very much a part of a revenue department. I'll tell you why. Customer success is a function where a dedicated team is always in touch with the customers. So usually what happens is salespeople, they come out of the equation the moment the first check is in or the payments are made or the implementation is done, right? Of course, that's their job. But a dedicated customer success team, they take right hand holding, they get introduced to the customers, they go and listen to them, they understand why in the first place did they buy, to solve what challenges, what is their objective or what is their goal pertaining to this product. So when my product has gone into their world, what is it doing? What are they doing about it? Right? So one of our clients, they are a CRM system, right? And one fine day, their founder, John, he was on a call with me and he says, Gaurav, 36% of our customers are actually not using our product very frequently. So their sales team are barely logging in once in a week. And that's quite hazardous. 36% is a huge number. Now, why? If they are not using it very often, naturally they are not serving their objective. If they are not serving their objective, then next fiscal year, the renewal is a threat. Out of these 36%, certain percent of their customers are going to drop off. And eventually they're going to go to a cheaper alternative or a freemium alternative or something of that sort. So basically there is a threat of them losing that customer. So this customer success team is important to ensure that the users, the end users, are eventually using the system or using the product that they have delivered. Because if that happens, there are two things. There are two golden nuggets here. One, they are ensuring the customer is retained, which means the hard work the entire sales unit has done in terms of acquiring them is going to get retained, is going to get reward every year. Second thing, they are going to get insights. When they get insights, when they talk to their customers on what the product is doing, how they are helping, they start getting a lot of facts and understanding about the relationship between the product and the customer. And without we, in real sense, understanding the relationship between our product and the user, it is very difficult to actually go about building our brand out there in the market, especially when the world is so competitive. So, sitting in an office, in a cabin, brainstorming with a marketing team, with a product team, yes, we can think about a brand. But a real brand value and its communication to the world out there can only happen when we have details, in detail information about what our product is doing to the customer and what our customers are thinking that their product is, that our product is doing to them. Because if that's not happening, basically if we are not taking that information, then how will we know what our customers are feeling about our product? Because if we know that, we will come up with a stickiness strategy. Stickiness strategy is basically something where customers are ensured that they are using a product frequently. Because if we don't do that, tomorrow our competitor is going to do that. Okay, so which is why customer success is extremely important. Sure. That's a good question. Now, usually, I said that usually when the payment is done, salespeople are out from that cycle, in that cycle, right? Sometimes what happens is, now there are companies where salespeople are meant to continue to a certain stage where customer is comfortable, or they don't have a dedicated customer success team, so they are ensured for relationship maintenance. So it's again a strategy where varies from leader to leader and companies to companies. But then I would believe, in my personal opinion, I would say sales guys must be there maintaining a relationship with the customers, because customer, especially if we talk about the Indian geography, people don't want people to change. So if I'm purchasing a broadband for my office, if guy coming in day one, he's giving me and explaining the plan, and after 1 month someone else is coming, then I'm disconnected. Then I'm more inclined towards talking to, if Jio guy is gone, then I'm more inclined towards talking to Airtel guy, because I already have some rapport with him. So it's a more human thing. Right. Yeah. 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 Sure. I was waiting someone would ask that. Yes. So B2C is something where things are very subjective. I'm an e-commerce. I'm selling A to ghee online, right? Someone coming in, a housewife is coming onto my portal. They saw social media post. They came onto my website. They made a purchase of 4,000 rupees, and they went out. It's an entire journey of say 3 to 5 minutes. It's B2C. Now selling a flat is also B2C, but that's a different ball game altogether. Or I would say selling a bike worth 1 lakh rupee is also a B2C thing. So B2C is a very, very subjective thing. However, let me assume if the product life cycle is small and the product value is also not very big or very complicated, where decision making is, taking a lot of thinking time. So considering that, first connect is something where they come across your product. Okay, they hear about it, they come about the content, or they received your email or something, and then they went deep into understanding about your product. So if they have, say for example, received a catalog, so from a catalog they see a mobile phone and they open their WhatsApp and they connect with you and they start exchanging messages. So this is where they're actually extracting more information or showing their interest. So that's a stage that they're covering between meeting and opportunity. Okay, so it is quite subjective, and it is so subjective that, especially because of technology playing a huge role, it is very difficult that which phase is going to take how much of time. Because one of the key reasons here is emotions are dominating over logic. In B2C, that is very important to understand. Emotions will, on 99% of times, will dominate over the logics. Okay. If you have any specific question, you can ask. Or anyone has any specific question about B2C? Yeah. Yeah. So this example that I gave you, a housewife coming to the website, that is more emotional, because if I'm writing about A to ghee is very beneficial for kids, the so and so are the health benefits and all. That's more emotional thing, right? Another example I would tell you, family is going out to purchase a car, right? So if I say, if they are going out to purchase a car, they will list down the features and lot many things, and they'll do comparison. But eventually the decision will be more emotional. Why? They also want to think what our neighbors have. I would also like to think what my colleague has. If he is having a Volkswagen, then I wouldn't have anything less than a Skoda, right? It is, emotions will play. In businesses, what happens is they want to think more practical because it's about serving a business. But when it comes to B2C, it is always more emotional. And I will also tell you that emotions will also come into picture in B2B as well. Yeah.
First connection.
Yeah.
Like you see, there's a saturation in how we approach customers.
Yes.
Social media posting.
Yeah.
Or let's take a classical example of credit card calls.
Yeah.
Every day we get around 3 million calls.
Yeah.
So now we don't even listen to them. And there's
Yeah.
a survey recently done on YouTube ads. So after 3 seconds, the focus of the user is on skip button. So whatever they're playing in that duration time, they don't focus on it.
Yeah.
So do you think that we need to shift our focus or devise some new tool to make a first connection? Because social media or these other platforms, it's related to that they will be outdated. So is there some opinion on that part?
Yeah. Now, that's a very, very important question. The thing is, now very important to understand. Okay, please pay attention to this. Now our customers are humans. Regardless B2B or B2C, they are humans when we are trying to approach them. How many number of hours these customers have in a day? 24 hours. Everybody has 24 hours, right? Now, in these 24 hours, if we say in today's world, things are very unpredictable. Especially after pandemic, how many people are spending more time on phone, more time on laptop, more time on family conversations, more time Just walking or doing health and fitness activities, it is uncertain, right? So if I'm really active on my phone, okay, so there are unlimited channels potentially that I can access, but at a time I'm only accessing one channel. Do you agree? If I'm watching Netflix, in a time I'm only watching Netflix. I'm not watching something else. There are people who are watching Netflix, their laptop is on and they are also on WhatsApp. But a given time, I would say, let us fragment it to 3 to 5 minutes of time frame. Okay, it is only limited to 3 to 5 minutes. After that, person is distracted. If the interest is not piqued, curiosity is not served, then it's gone. Boom, something else is capturing their attention. So this 3 to 5 minutes of that time frame, they are active in only one thing, regardless they have certain multiple things happening, right? Now, for example, my wife is writing an email to her boss. My son is coming right next to him and asking, Mom, this maths equation is not fitting in. She'll explain to that. She's also sipping a cup of coffee, and then her mother is also calling. So she's doing multitasking all at a time. But if we see the 3 to 5 minutes of time frame, her focus is primarily on her work. Other thing, 30 to 40 seconds of switch and then gone. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here is, yes, phone calls, social media ads, or blog articles, WhatsApp messages, bulk SMSs, there are so many things and it is all cluttered. Now, this is where the skill and the mindset of sales and marketing will come into picture. How differently are you actually going about in understanding your target audience and effectively connecting to them? If they are active on, say, Facebook, it's all flooded, yes, but how differently are you placing your ad? Okay, it is about how you're communicating to them. So for which it is very important to understand who your customers are and what they are doing and why will they pay attention to your ad, or basically not just ad, or any first touch point that is coming right in front of them. So today, as a very good example you gave, that was call from a bank. Now every banker has the same flat tune to offer me. Every banker. I'm a business guy. I will definitely need a loan. I will definitely need a loan, right? But pitch me so that I'm curious enough to listen to you. I need it. See, it's a very live example, okay? It's a very live example. I definitely need a loan. But then there is no person who is actually talking in such a term. So for that, it is very important. It's very simple human logic. I would say, just sound interesting. That's it. You need not sound innovative. You need not sound creative. Nothing. You just have to sound interesting. Through a text, through a video, through a voice, whichever, whatever that is. You just sound interesting to them and you will get their attention. Your objective of your first connect is only and only the 3 to 5 seconds of time frame. That's it. Once they are beyond 5 seconds, you got their attention. Anyone has any question here again? Please try to understand. It is very important.
On the marketing campaign and advertisement, it costs more also, right?
Yeah. Now B2B is difficult or B2C? I would say both are difficult. Which is more difficult? I'm not very sure. Now you see Elon Musk is selling space programs to individuals, right? But at the same time, if you see Microsoft is selling enterprise solutions. Now who is doing more difficult job? We can't really say, right? So it is subjective. It is very subjective. And I would say, rather than thinking, how we are in relative terms to the industry segments or, the other entities across the globe or in the business units, maybe even your competitor, I would say compete with your future process and future system with your previous systems. In a nutshell, I'm talking about evolution. You keep evolving your system every year, maybe every quarter. We are small startups, right? There's nothing wrong if we are evolving our systems every quarter. If we are running a campaign over a social media, whether that's B2B or B2C, we are targeting a certain type of audience for 3 months. Just understand, just measure how things were and just evolve in the next quarter, right? So it is more about how we are going, because it's a process. Until and unless that maturity stage is achieved where our systems are in place, the team is in place, we are actually fighting with ourselves. With that help? Yeah. Now, a lot of businesses are dependent on referrals. I've met a lot of sales heads, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs who say that all our business is coming through references, and that's fantastic, right? Why was there no need for them to go about doing any outbound marketing or paid ads or any such things in terms of, when they wanted to generate leads? Okay. There are good and bad of referrals, both, I would say, but then it is important. I would say, at least at the initial stages, it is a must. Now, referral is something where we use a credible resource, which is in the form of a friend, a colleague, a customer, a neighbor, or a relative, or someone who knows us, and they know someone who is a potential buyer. So basically, we make use of a credible resource who believes in us, and he connects us to a potential buyer. Basically, this in simple term is a referral sales system. Okay. Now, I would like to share my personal referral system that I follow. In the last 7 years of my agency business, I've only done referral business. Okay, I have never gone out doing any paid ads. I've never gone out sending any emails. I've only got referral business, and we have worked with more than 20 companies. Right now, what do I do? This might also apply to mid to high ticket B2C customers as well. This could also potentially, if you automate, it will apply to small ticket sized B2C also. It's a matter of automating it. Now, first thing is, make a list of all those people, customers, colleagues, friends who might know you, and they might potentially know about a customer. Make a list of all those people. I would also make a list of people who highly believe in what I'm doing, even if I'm not sure whether they are connected to any potential customers or not. Second, contact them, just simply contact them and tell them, I'm looking for someone in so-and-so business or in so-and-so thing with so-and-so need. And if you can connect me, it will mean a lot to me. That simple word, please pay attention to that last line. It will mean a lot to me. Okay.
We have larger consumer base. Maybe work for consulting firms like word to word more publicity, but for the larger consumer segment, it may not work.
See, I would say, if you are trying to spread a word of mouth, now word of mouth, is there any particular product type or industry where word of mouth will not work?
Definitely, for some extent, it will for let's say 1,000 customers or even 10,000 customers, but not for we are targeting like suppose 10 million or 1 million customers in the next 5 years. So it will not. This strategy will not work for long term.
Do you know what? Especially for that segment is why social media was created.
Currently, we are working on affiliate marketing.
Yeah. So, what you can do is, when you're talking about reaching out to the masses, what you do is you start with small number. You perfect your process. You perfectly refine your process, and you then think about how to scale that process. Okay. Now, when I told you, make a list of people and ask them, you might imagine asking them picking up phone. Yes, you do that. You do that at the initial level. But moving on, what you can do is, there are WhatsApp automation tools, there are email automation tools. You pick them and then you start reaching out to your people. So you reach out to the people who are in the known networks, and through them you can create a referral system. Now, the reason why I'm talking about referral system is because it's not because we should be dependent on them, but it is a fantastic parallel revenue generation system. And for some companies, it actually works like magic. And 70 to 80% of the revenue comes from referral system because they are so well in setting up their process that it is working as a chain reaction for them. Okay, so I was at the second step. So you reach out to them and you say that I'm looking for someone in so and so, and if you can help me connect to someone, it will mean a lot. Okay, now this word mean a lot will actually impact them emotionally. And third step is what most of the people they don't do, and that is following up with the person to whom you have asked for referral. Just call them back and ask them, hey, just a couple of weeks back I was in touch with you, I wanted to connect to someone. Is there anyone that you could find? Just ask them. They would say no. Of course, they didn't came back, so they are going to say no. Hey, if still there is anyone, do let me know. Just a touch back. And I actually get all my responses from that third step. I get my responses from that third step. And now one of the key steps at the initial stages that sales reps miss on is qualifying a customer. Now, as Gaurav just gave a very good example in his question, that bank people are calling. So why these systems are not working and they are annoying us is because they are not qualifying. They are not qualifying us. If those people, they call me and ask me a question, then from their system they can remove my name if I'm not qualified. But I'm again and again I'm getting those calls because they are not qualifying. They are just trying to sell on the first conversation. And basically they want to sell in 30 seconds, which is not possible. That was probably possible 20 years back, but not now. So qualification is something where if a sales guy is successfully completing that journey, then he's ensuring that the mature part of the sales cycle, which actually consumes 90% of his time, he's ensuring that he's only talking to the right people. So with that, I'm not saying that sales guys should reach out to someone who are not target market fit. Target market fit is there. I'm talking about qualification within the target market fit. If you have a bunch of, say, 25 companies right in front of you who are ideally fitting into your target segment, and if you go about reaching out to them, there is high probability that the founder that you are talking to purchase your product, he is not in a situation to buy it now or maybe in another couple of years. Then that's an unqualified prospect for you. He is a potential buyer, but not now, maybe after 2 years. Not just time, there could be other reasons why they do not want to buy as well. They would have probably bought a similar thing just a year back and it didn't work out, and emotionally they are drained out. They just don't believe that such products can work. So this is not the right time for that sales guy to go and talk to him. Maybe through content or through different channels, try to build that trust again, regain that trust. So first thing that to do in terms of qualifying customers, first thing is every sales guy must be very clear about the definition of definition of who the real customer is. If that is very clear, then it will be easier for them to identify the right questions. As early as possible, understand if customer is the right fit and if this is the right time for them to explore about their product. They could be potentially right, but if time is not right, again, it's not, it's not wise for the salespeople to go about wasting their time behind them. A couple of questions. Personally, that I use to qualify the customers at the initial stages is, what are you currently doing about, the problem that your product is facing? You can just ask them, what are you currently doing about, in this thing? If the answer is not very specific, or if they are not very positive, then that's an indication that they have never paid attention to it, or they are not serious about it. Second, apart from budget, what could possibly stop you from using solution or product? In India specifically, we all know that budget is 9 out of 10 times an objection that we face, right? So you can be very clear upfront. If budget is not the issue, what do you think that for this product could be a challenge for you in terms of going forward in having further discussions? And from that data, you will be able to figure out whether this customer is going to seriously pay attention to the conversation or the conversation is not going to be very serious. Now, why qualification is important is across 12 months, there are these 2 to 3 months where a sales rep is actually flooded with a lot of leads and a lot of deals in their sales pipeline. And there are a certain 2 or 3 months of time where everything is dry, right? So when there is a peak time, then you focus only on potentially qualified customers and you keep those in the back burner who are not potentially strong enough. And when the period is dry, where there are no real things in your pipeline, then you go back to all those unqualified customers, just have a casual conversation. So now, where I began talking about the unstoppable system, so I'm going to talk what are those key things which can help you in setting up your system, which can be unstoppable for you. First thing is, daily prospecting is a must. Whether you are alone, you are a solopreneur, you have a team, you have a dedicated sales team, regardless what, I would seriously advise every founder, even if there are 4 partners, all 4 of them should spare at least 10 to 15 minutes aside in their day in prospecting. Write emails, connect to your customers on LinkedIn, connect to them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram, see what they're doing on social media, write a message to them, record a video and send to them, do whatever, but then spend at least 10 to 15 minutes every day in prospecting. By that, what you're doing is you are connecting to at least 2 to 5 strangers every day. If I average it out to 3, that's 15 in a week. That's about 60 in a month. And 60 new prospects who didn't know that your product or your company or you exists, they try to evolve. They are in a situation where they have known about you, and a part of those people will actually take a little smaller step in terms of understanding what you're doing or what your product is about. And by any chance, if any of these prospects, if they have any common connections or if they have any commonality between you and them, then that's again a different advantage. So the best thing that you can do right now from today itself is to spend 15 minutes every day connecting to the new prospects. Now you might also say that, Gaurav, if I have to go about connecting to new prospects, first I'll have to go and search them. Yes, you will have to go and search them. So initially you can spend 2 weeks in terms of building list on your own. You can hire an intern, right? You can hire an intern and have them dedicated work to build your list, right? And then from 3rd week, you are there. From 3rd week onward, you are there to go back and contact your customers. Second, always try to add value to your customers. If you talk to them, if they are messaging you on social media or WhatsApp, try to add some value. Some value, that value could be in the form of information. The value could be in the form of something that you're offering them. If you have a product, you're offering them a sample, right? There could be some value. Why? Because first thing is you will sound interesting to them. Second thing, they will feel good about it. Subconscious level, they'll feel as if, they got something while coming in touch with you. So if they got something, and in future, it is easier for them to recollect you. Every day, as I said, we are active on phones and TVs everywhere. Every day we are coming across new brands. How will we recollect those brands? We will only recollect if we got something out of it, right? Measure everything using technology. Everything that you are doing, the data that you are gathering, the first contact that you are making, the meeting or demo information that you are getting, any kind of new insight you are acquiring from your customers, capture every piece of information in your system. Now, with this information, every quarter on quarter, you will start getting some patterns. You will start identifying a certain things. Now, in this e-commerce, when we began, we were extremely focused at selling it to the urban population. But today, after 19 months of our inception, I see that actually our 60% of orders have come from tier 3 cities, right? So this has happened because we started tracking everything. And the abandoned cart from my portal also states the same thing. A majority chunk of my abandoned cart is from there. So basically, abandoned cart means they have left my checkout process and they have exited. But it also matters to me because they have shown interest in my product, and that is why they come to my website. Right? So this is a piece of information that you can get if you start measuring everything. And this is a very, very, very basic information. If I go about and start digging about the views and engagement from my social media platforms, then that's a totally different thing that I'm going to explore. So everything that you can potentially come across about everything in sales, please capture. And yes, my personal favorite is spreadsheet to start with. I would always advise, if you don't have any CRM figured out, or if you are confused between 2 or 3 different options, start with a spreadsheet. Create your own process in your spreadsheet. Use it for 6 to 10 months or 12 months. And once you think that yes, everything on spreadsheet is working good and now spreadsheet is unnecessarily taking a whole lot of your time, now you take this spreadsheet and go about talking to 6 to 7 different CRM guys and tell them that this is my spreadsheet, this is my process, how can your system help me do that? No system will serve 100% of your purpose, but then see which is coming with the highest percentage. Some will come with 40% of their objective, someone will come with 70-80%. Then that will help you identifying the right CRM. I also mean that there could be some CRM who are serving 40% of what your process is able to do, and they are coming for free, but then there will be certain system who will charge 500 rupees a month, but they'll promisingly come and say that we can do 80% of what you're doing. Right? And with just 500 rupees of that investment, you can save so much of your time and energy. So starting with a spreadsheet would always be a wise advice that I would offer you. Entrepreneurs must be incentivized. Now you might laugh at me for this, but then I don't intend to say that you incentivize yourself in terms of some remuneration. But then today, say if you have explored a lead, a potential buyer came in touch with you, and after a couple of weeks or whenever, if that closes, go to Starbucks, relax, have a cup of coffee. Go to that pub that you always enjoy, sit there, have a glass of beer. Incentivize yourself. Why? Your manifestation inside, that manifestation is going on. Because you initiated something that closed, and now you're feeling good about it. Otherwise, what will happen is that customer will close, that revenue will come, you will get into your daily routine. You're not feeding your subconscious mind that it has come out of something that you have dedicatedly created a habit and that has started working. So, do incentivize yourself in the form of small rewards. You can just simply, the moment you see that this deal is closed, yes, you just leave everything, go downstairs, go out, go to that chai wala, have a cup of tea. Just take a break and feel good about it. Because a lot of times we take a lot of load on ourselves and we go very heavy in doing what we are doing, right? So such simple things can actually be very beneficial to us. Now, this is something that will totally change our perspective in terms of, B2B, B2C, or in terms of the way the world is doing marketing today, right? Now, something, if you remember, I said about unstoppable sales, which was painless sales system. Now, and the best way to do that is personal branding. We are all founders here, we are all entrepreneurs, we all have dreams, we are all here to solve some problems, we are all here to imagine world in a different shape and form. That is why we are existing here, and that is why we are all here today, right? Now, there are two things. There are two kinds of entrepreneurs. Both these entrepreneurs are doing personal branding. Okay. Both these entrepreneurs are doing personal branding. One is someone who many people know what he is doing and why is he doing. The second entrepreneur, people don't know what he is doing and why is he doing. And why will you ask me why that second entrepreneur is doing personal branding? That second entrepreneur is personal branding to himself only. He's only limited to himself or maybe his immediate team or family. Right? Now, what is personal branding? You might say writing a lot of posts. You might say advertising. You might say hiring a team and then, getting your brand story written. I would say no, that's not the definition of personal branding. What is personal branding is? Personal branding is something where you go about and you tell the world what you believe you are doing. Right? If you don't tell the world wouldn't know. If they wouldn't know, why will they believe in you? If they don't believe in you, why will they work for you? And if they don't believe in you, why will they buy from you? And for entrepreneur, both team and customers matters a lot. If you're not doing that, you are dependent on the system which is created by the world, and that world has created a very standardized and very boring system. To find a job, you'll go to Naukri.com, you'll dependent, right? To find customers, you'll go to Facebook, and as Gaurav said, you are dependent on those boring methodologies. But if you do this, if you do your personal branding, if you go about talking to the world about your vision, has anyone listened about Vishen Lakhiani here? Anyone knows Mind Valley? Okay, no one? So please go and search for Mind Valley. Vishen Lakhiani, entrepreneur. He started his business in a very small room in New York. And today the world is talking about him. The vision, if you just listen to his vision, you'll get scared. You'll think that yes, Elon Musk is doing something scary, but then this guy cannot be eliminated. Vishen Lakhiani is in an enormous journey. So please go and read about him. Personal branding is about visualizing your vision, communicating your vision, and increasing believers. And personal branding is not to generate revenue. Personal branding is not to acquire customers. It is about creating a system where you keep building more believers. Right? For example, I have a picture of Dhoni here for a right purpose. Dhoni is one of those biggest personal branding examples. If he makes a statement, world will take it seriously. Regardless if it is about cricket, or if it is about his hobby in organic farming, or if it is about his paramilitary. If he makes a statement, world is there to listen. When he speaks about his approach towards his family relations, world is listening. When he talks about his approach or his time with his daughter, world is listening to him. When he's in the press conference, world is listening to him. So he's impacted the world more because of his mind and the way he deals with people and what kind of person he is. Not just, he's a person way beyond cricket. If you think about Sachin Tendulkar, yes, he's a cricketer, he's a batsman. And third thing, maybe we don't know. But if we talk about Dhoni, you will attach probably more than a dozen keywords to it. So that's personal branding. He never, I don't say that because he's so active on Twitter or whatever. No. Because of him, because the way he is, people know him as a person, more as a person and also as a cricketer. Yes, very good example. Baba Ramdev is a very good example. In fact, one of the most successful personal branding stories, not just in India, but for entire world. Arnab Goswami. It's more about personal branding. It's about person and Narendra Modi, right? So, people believe in people. Now, can you tell me you believe in a product? Yes, you believe in a product. But now you imagine when you believe in a person, that's a totally different thing. You are talking about things which are at next level. The first thing is, with personal branding and when the entrepreneurs are talking about their visions and their goals, you're not talking to businesses, you're not talking to B2C or B2B because you're not talking to customers. You as a human are talking to human. That's it. That's it. And this is the new form of marketing. This is the new form of marketing, human to human. Manu Kumar Jain. Anyone knows Manu Kumar Jain? Xiaomi CEO? Yes. If you see him, he's so active. In fact, he taught me how to do B2C marketing on LinkedIn. I never imagined B2C marketing on LinkedIn, but looking at him, I started believing that yes, B2C marketing can also be done on LinkedIn. Right? He is magical. You just follow him. I'm not saying that he's a great marketer or he's a great businessman, but then you just see the way he communicates, that confidence. There are certain things that you start liking in that person, and that's what is impacting you. One day I just impulsively took a decision. He said that I'm, what they say, crowdfunding. He's doing a crowdfunding for a new Xiaomi shoe. Now, who would imagine that a mobile phone brand is launching a shoe? And I actually made a purchase. I was working, I was waiting for a client meeting. I just opened my LinkedIn. I had a 7 to 8 minute window. I saw that this guy is long, showing me a shoe. I actually bought it. Right? So it was not the shoe that I was buying. It was something that Manu Kumar Jain showed it to me, which I purchased. And these are all different things. And believe me, it works in B2B also. Because B2B decisions are made by humans. Humans can be influenced. What can influence a human? Another human. Vishen Lakhiani is selling his courses to so many entrepreneurs and they are giving it to their employees. Now that's a B2B transaction. Right? Now another thing, why personal branding is so powerful? Stories. Stories. If I'm here, if I tell you that right yesterday I was at Microsoft Gachibowli, and if I tell you right at the end of the course, I'm going to guarantee you that in your next quarter you are going to make 1 crore of revenue. Now, will that impact your mind and raise your curiosity? I'm not saying that you'll make a transaction, but will that raise a curiosity? That's the power of story. Now, not just because of numbers, but it is a story that emotionally connects with you. And it could be anything. And with stories, I mean, in your personal branding, you write things about yourself, about your motivation, you write about your failures as well. Now, as entrepreneurs, you would have failed so many times. You're creating your product, you're trying to create a market, you're trying to set your operations, you're trying to implement a CRM system, you're failing everywhere. Write about your failure stories, people will connect with it. Because people want to learn from a failure. People want to learn, I fail to hua, but ये entrepreneur hai. Fail hua, but kiya kya, uske aage kya? Right? So, and everything can come up with a story. And these stories, they sell way better than any PPT can sell. And the last thing, when people start believing in you, they are not your customers. Now there is one thing that, there is a friend of mine who always says, यार मुझे कोई समझता ही नहीं. Right? So he's, very introvert and all. So whatever he does, he's like, बहुत जल्दी परेशान, बहुत ज़्यादा परेशान रहता है. So when we meet, he says, मुझे ये नहीं समझता, मुझे वो नहीं समझता. The difference is we are trying to create people who can understand things. But now imagine, what if people start following you? जरूरत पड़ेगी कि लोग आपको आके समझें? जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी. Because they are your followers. So what do you want to do? You want people to understand you or you want people to follow you? So that will come through, creating a kind of inspiration. And inspiration, you can only inspire someone if you are inspired. Right? If you want to inspire your customers first, before that, you will have to inspire your team. If you want to inspire your team, you will first have to stay inspired. Your eyes need to talk what you are talking about. They need to talk way faster and way deeper than what you are talking about. Right? Every time you gotta be proactive, so that your team can connect with you. So, and when that thing starts happening, you will never feel like stopping anywhere. You will never feel like looking back. You will never allow your team members to stop even. And believe me, your team members would not like to come out of your zone as well. Now, he is Manu Kumar Jain. Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, once said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So that's very simple definition of a personal brand. Why will that happen? Because he basically means people should talk about you when you're not there. And what they're talking about you in your absence is actually your personal brand. Now, last reason why to do personal branding, more than 70% of buyers, this is from real data, specific to B2B, more than 70% of buyers, they actually go about checking at the seller's profile on LinkedIn. Why are they checking that? Why? Are they buying seller's profile? Are they going to buy that person? No, they want to buy a product. Then why are they looking at seller's profile? Because they want to see something about them. They want to understand something about them. It's just an inclination. Very specifically, I have this stat in front of you, not just because people are branding themselves. it also another side. There is a story on the another side as well, and that is buyers are also equally interested in knowing about it. So from both the sides, if we see, there is a strong balance. And yes, today it is something that human is eventually buying from the human. And there's a saying, as people say, that it's not a product that a buyer is buying. It is a sales guy from whom the product is sold. Now, I just want to show, with some real data, I want to show something. How the impact of words written by human to a human. Now, it's more of a mindset. When as a human, you're writing to a human, how it impacts. We have excellent customer service. I can write that. And someone is writing, any questions? Call us at this number. We'll pick up within 3 rings. That's a promise. Now, which one is stronger statement? The second one is positioning you like totally differently. Totally differently. And because it is about customer service, customers are always reluctant to call because phone koi uthata hi nahi hai yaar. Koi baat to kare. But if I'm promising that within 3 rings your phone will be answered, then that's a motivation and that's a differentiator. If you're talking, say for example, if there's a rehab center, then someone will write your addiction ends here. And the other guy writes, if you think you need rehab, you do. Is there a difference? So, my point here is, when we think, when that mindset churns inside us, right? So the things that we look at, they change. And the things that we do are at totally different level. Email that you write, the phone conversations that we make, the presentations that we do, they are all at different level, and that will only happen. Skills will help you implement that. But what will take you to that level? That is only the mindset. For emotions and logic, one very quick example I'd like to do. We only have a couple of minutes. We all have seen 3 Idiots movie, right? Raju Rastogi, everybody remembers? Now, Raju Rastogi, in one phase of time, he was more inclined towards getting in the team of Silencer. We remember? Chatur's team, right? He went there. Now, what pulled him there? What pulled him into the team of Chatur? Why did he wanted to go there? Because of logic. The logic was, he is more disciplined, he scores well, he is a topper, and with him I will also score better. There was a logic. But anyone here disagrees with that logic? Is there anyone who would disagree with that logic? But eventually what happened? Eventually he went back to his group of friends. Why? Because of emotions. Can anyone explain the logic that Amir Khan sold to Raju Rastogi? And that's what I meant to say. Emotions will always overpower logics, especially in the technologies world. Emotions will always, even in B2B, yes. Even in B2B. Because eventually it is a human who is making a purchase decision and a human can get influenced. So I'm not saying that logics are irrelevant, but what I'm saying is use logical data to tickle emotions in the human. That can be done through content, that can be done through phone conversations, that can be done anywhere. So that's all about today's session, guys. This is in a nutshell what I do. If anyone needs any sort of help, you can just email me, and then anywhere if you're stuck, you can always let me know. Today's session, if anyone has any questions, all feel free. Yes, please. Sure. Definitely. Please ask me such questions. Yeah. 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 True. No. Now that's what is happening, sir. Now, all these years, all these decades, we were buying from what celebrities said. But why personal branding is required is actually to break that system. You won't believe me, about 10 to 12 years back, a college kid told me, we were talking about marketing. I was just entering into sales. We were just having discussion, and he told me, Amir Khan is branding, he's learning about Tata Sky. Does he have Tata Sky at his own home? He's telling the entire world to buy Tata Sky. And it actually occurred to me here. I started thinking. And he also said, Amitabh Bachchan says, कुछ मीठा हो जाए, कुछ मीठा हो जाए, वो खुद कितना खाता है, right? It is there. He said, his point was, celebrity endorsement makes no meaning. And which is exactly why we as entrepreneurs should take that stand and start doing personal branding, right? If we see big brands, I also took examples of big brands like Manu Kumar Jain. Manu Kumar Jain is a big brand in himself, and he also is endorsing a big brand, right? Because he's selling using data, and he's also selling using emotions as well. He's showing the world why people should use his products. He's not endorsing any celebrity to sell his phones. So the things are changing. And celebrity endorsement, there will be a day where celebrity endorsements will come to a stop. Yeah. So, any questions? All right then. Thanks a lot, everyone. It was great being in front of you all.